Today on Network Africa, the protests continue in South Africa as police fire stun grenades at students of the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. France could be turning its back on a former colony as it threatens sanctions on the Democratic Republic of Congo. Plus, nothing shows cordial diplomatic ties better than being able to hold a foreign festival in another country. Let's begin Network Africa. Welcome everyone, I am Amarachi Ubani. Protests are continuing in South Africa over a possible increase in tuition fees after the Education Ministry announced that schools could raise them by 8%. Though the government has banned students from gathering in groups of not more than 15, hundreds have been out protesting, defying a proposed court order. The police have responded, firing stun grenades to disperse crowds, especially at the University of Witwatersrand in Joburg. The university had announced an ultimatum for classes to resume this week or be closed for the rest of the academic year. The protesting students say they want free education as promised by the ruling African National Congress. Speaking of protests, they continued yesterday in Ethiopia's Oromia region, despite scores of people losing their lives in a stampede on Sunday. There's still not been a reconciliation of how many people died in the stampede, but manager of the local hospital said the death toll had risen to 55 with 100 people injured. The toll had initially been put at 52. However, witnesses said they saw crowds on the streets of the towns of Ambo, Guda, Bulehora and others in Oromia yesterday. Understand the new protests are against the deaths that occurred on Sunday. Some witnesses said they heard gunshots and there is fear of reprisal. In the meantime, the government has declared a 3-day mourning period in honor of those killed during the protests. Flags are flying at half-mast throughout the country. Protests are becoming a common occurrence in Oromia region, especially in the last 2 years, triggered by a land row. It's gradually taken on a national appeal as people are using them to protest against the government. The protests in Oromia saw not only the demise of scores of people, but the destruction of property. One casualty is a cement factory owned by Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote. Destruction to the cement factory is a fallout of the aftermath of the protest on Sunday, in which 55 people were killed in a stampede in Oromia region. The protesters reportedly burned trucks and machinery at the factory located in Adaberga. They also allegedly freed prisoners after setting ablaze a police station in Bulehora area. Activists accused security forces for the stampede that happened on Sunday. They had opened fire at a religious gathering that turned political when people started shouting slogans at the government. The government has denied the reports and blamed evil forces for spreading a lie. The VOA's Salem Solomon joins us now for more on what's going on in Ethiopia. She's via Skype. She's joining us via Skype in Washington. Thanks for joining us on the program, Salem.
Thanks for having me.
How violent have the protests become since Sunday?
Well, there were continued anti-government protests across the Oromia region, as you've mentioned in the introduction, in places like Ambo, Nejo, Mendi, all these western parts of Oromia region. According to the deputy chairman of the opposition Oromo Federalist Congress, there are continued protests all across the Oromia region. In fact, he mentioned in north part of the capital during a funeral for a mother and child that were killed during the stampede. People were protesting, anti-government protests, and there were clashes. So these clashes have continued. A lot of people came to Bishoftu, which is a couple of miles from the capital city, to celebrate a cultural annual event called Recha. To celebrate their identity and celebrate the identity of Oromo. But the Abba Gada, which is the leader of the Oromia people who celebrate this cultural event, were invited to speak. During the event, there were government officials that came in, and people were not happy about government officials being involved in a cultural event, and so they protested, and they were crying out against or showing their protest, and so security forces used tear gas to disperse the crowd, and the fact that they used tear gas exacerbated the panic, and so there were people who went into ditches, steep ditches around the area.
Yeah, we saw some of those horrific pictures. A lot of bodies were pulled out of one particular ditch. We did see some lifeless bodies in some of the pictures that we're rolling now. But how is the government responding to the new protests, especially the ones that erupted yesterday?
And so, yeah, as we've mentioned, so the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Hailemariam Desalegn, had a statement on national TV saying that, so far on Sunday there were 52 deaths, but as you've mentioned, the number has admitted to 55 deaths. They've been saying that the security forces have tried to maintain security and peace in the midst of chaos. The Prime Minister also mentioned that there were people prior to the event trying to cause chaos. He called them disrupting forces were inside trying to cause chaos in general. But the government has been criticized in the past year for handling the problem, heavy-handed approach with security forces using sticks to beat attendees during the event. They have been pushing and beating them, and there were videos surfacing that showed the crackdown. But in the past year, since November 2015, so many human rights defenders and other groups have been criticizing the government of Ethiopia about the way they're going about handling peaceful protesters.
But is that having any effect on them? Because that's actually a concern, the fact that there doesn't seem to be any international conversation about what's going on in Ethiopia.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm glad you mentioned human rights groups, but have there also been other members of the international community concerned about what's happening in Ethiopia?
Definitely, there's been there's been a response condemning how the government is handling these protests, anti-government protests. The government not only has been handling the protests with cracking down on peaceful protesters and arresting thousands of students who came out and resisting what is commonly known as the master plan. It is a development plan to expand the municipality of the capital city and encroached into regional administration of the Oromia region. So farmers were threatened because their farmlands were at stake, their livelihood was at stake, and so students, peaceful students, were protesting, and so the government has been responding very strongly. Not only that, they've been cracking down on internet, they've been shutting down social media to prevent the flow of information. And so from international community, the U.S. has made a strong statement condemning the actions taken by the government. Human rights groups have been condemning it. The UN has condemned it, saying that they are looking for independent investigation into human rights abuses in the country.
Salem, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Appreciate your contribution, especially to what's going on in Ethiopia.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Egypt's Interior Ministry has confirmed a senior member of the Muslim Brotherhood has been killed. Mohammed Kamal was reportedly killed in gun battle alongside another member of the group. Kamal had been in charge of the group's armed wing, although the Brotherhood maintains it is an exclusively peaceful organization. He had been sentenced to life in prison on 2 counts in absentia, but had not been seen since Monday. Now, France looks set to cut off ties with the Democratic Republic of Congo over recent political unrest. Over indications President Joseph Kabila has no plans to step down. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault said in an interview on French television that unless Mr. Kabila abided by the constitution and steps down at the end of his current term, France would impose sanctions. He did not elaborate what areas the sanctions would cover, but he called on President Kabila to play by the rules and on the people to be reasonable, saying people in power must assume responsibilities if they want peace in their country. He called on the country's leaders to abide by the constitution. The DRC government has fired back at its former colonial master, accusing France of inciting dissent against the regime over the upcoming presidential election. The communications minister, Lambert Mendes, said France is playing a dangerous game, accusing it of encouraging extremists, saying, quote, France will fly out its citizens and will leave the Congolese to fend for themselves. He says there are now suspicions over France's concern at the country's political unrest, as their interference could result in the chaos already created in Libya. Let's bring in legal practitioner Chukwemeka Eze, who's been keenly following developments in the DRC. Mr. Eze, it's great to have you on the program.
Good evening.
You already predicted President Kabila had no intentions of stepping down. How do you feel knowing that that's gradually playing out?
Yes, it is playing out. One need not be Nostradamus to know that Kabila, at the age of 45, is not ready to leave power. And the reason is given now that the country has not done the voters' registration, and that they will finish the voters' registration by July this year and conduct the election July 2017, and conduct the election late 2018. That means the next 2 years. He could have done this. He could have started preparation 2 years ago. So for Kabila to wait up till now and begin to give these excuses is a clear sign that he didn't want to leave power. And in May, he went to the Constitutional Court to get an order to remain in office until the election is conducted. So definitely he's playing out his cards.
France has already been warning all the parties involved in this to be calm and to stop the unrest and the killings. Over 50 people have already been killed in the days of the protests some weeks ago. When the government announced that the postponement of the elections would happen, now France is threatening sanctions. Do you think that France will follow through?
Yes, I suspect there will be sanctions from the South America. There are already 2 resolutions before the United States Congress calling for sanctions against those who are working against the rule of law and human rights by denying the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo a right to choose the government of their choice. As we all know that Kabila would have left office December 20 after an election scheduled for November 20. But as it is now, he won't be going. I foresee sanctions coming against him, but I don't think it will be widespread because many Western countries are benefiting from the rich mineral resource in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they wouldn't want to harm Kabila because of their investment. But nevertheless, there is already an outcry. The United Nations, the African Union, the European Union, and the International Organization of La Francophone, the 4 parties have come together to issue a common statement that Kabila should tread softly and engage in a dialogue process to ensure that it's safe in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Mr. Chukwemeka Eze, I appreciate again you're joining us. Thank you for following this story for us here on Network Africa. So ahead on the program, one controversial music video turns Kannywood on its head. Just stay with us for more.